feudal Japan was a time of warring clans of samurai and chaos. It was very unlike the peaceful nation it is today. One man stood up against this conflict and put all of his peers in order. Since the Ashikaga shogunate, the government of late 1500 Japan demonstrated poor leadership, causing internal wars and conflicts. Daimyo Oda Nobunaga refused to compromise his land with this underskilled empire. Instead, he led a brutal campaign annihilating the shogunate and set out to rule Japan himself, eventually leading to Japan becoming the united nation it is today. The Ashikaga shogun's ineffective leadership made the daimyo rebel because they wanted to be free from the government, and the shogunate, with their lack of military skills, could not do anything about it, leading to the conflict of the Onin Civil War. Basically, a feudal system with the many daimyos led to a dispute about imperial and shogunal succession and turned into a civil war. This shows that a weak government can cause larger problems and internal conflicts than the nation itself. This is because the clans of Japan decided they could take advantage of the Ashikaga shogunate's lenient feudal system and try to attain more land for themselves. Specifically, the 10-year Onin War, a period of chaos and warring samurai, led to destroying many beautiful monuments and temples in the capital of Kyoto, and taking control from the shogunate. Also, clans refused to follow the shogunate's new laws and expectations. Therefore, Japan was in need of a new and stronger government, which is where Oda Nobunaga comes in. In conclusion, the Ashikaga shogunate, being unable to hold control of the various clans in its empire, led to many revolts, which led to a civil war, leaving the once beautiful city of Kyoto in ruins. One of the daimyos, Oda Nobunaga, decided to not compromise his territory with the shogunate, as he wanted to give Japan a more organized and tougher leader that would unify the clans of Japan into one nation. Portuguese traders came in and traded the latest muskets to his army, increasing the threat of the strongest daimyo Japan had ever seen. As a result, the join or die threat made by Oda Nobunaga made his sieging of clans successful due to the Portuguese Christians' guns supplementing his samurai army. It also indicates that because Oda Nobunaga refused the compromise made by the incompetent shogunate, he was able to extend his territory over at least half of Japan. Surprisingly, it was not just Oda Nobunaga's great battle strategies, skill, and firearms that led to conquest that would eventually unify Japan, but his willingness to compromise with other clans through kind letters and peace treaties, like the Asakura, Amago, and Otomo. Also, his famous strategy of waiting for submission, then sneaking in and attacking, expanded his empire, and eventually took down the shogunate itself. This is because he noticed people were struggling under a poor empire, so he replaced it with his own better empire. All in all, instead of compromising his land with a weak empire, Oda Nobunaga, using brain and brawn, unified Japan. Although his brutal ways consequently made some of his men turn against him, leading to his death, his unifying was finished by Toyotomi Hideyoshi and later Tokugawa Ieyasu. For example, it is unknown why Akechi Mitsuhide, one of Oda Nobunaga's generals, betrayed him and forced him to commit seppuku, or Japanese ritual suicide, during a siege on the Mori clan's Takamatsu Castle. And there are many unlikely theories why, but most sources say it was because his mother died for Nobunaga's cause, or that he did not agree with Nobunaga's brutal ways. Consequently, although Nobunaga's ruthless and bloodthirsty behavior helped him unify Japan, it eventually led to betrayal by some of his men. Hence, Nobunaga's untimely death led to all his land being leaderless and in chaos again. But a young foot soldier named Toyotomi Hideyoshi stepped up and continued his conquest. Hideyoshi was inspired by Nobunaga's conquest and continued the pursuit of overall compromise and unification. This shows that even though Nobunaga died, his legacy lived on in others who finished the job and led to a unified Japan. It also indicates that Toyotomi Hideyoshi's unifying was continued by Tokugawa Ieyasu, who fully unified Japan and made the new Tokugawa shogunate officially the new shogunate of Japan. Although the three unifiers had similar goals, they had very different personalities, as shown in the Japanese story If a Bird Doesn't Sing. These personalities were all equally valuable in unifying Japan. To sum up, Toyotomi Hideyoshi and Tokugawa Ieyasu were inspired by Oda Nobunaga's incomplete unification and conquered the final half of Japan. Oda Nobunaga's central location on the map made him close to the conflict of the Onin War. This made him realize the destruction, so he built up an army to stop the battle by taking down the weak government and giving Japan a new leader to straighten things out, eventually leading to a nationwide compromise throughout Japan. In 1336, the Ashikage's rule seemed to be a new compromise. However, conflict flared in the wars to follow. By the end of the Azuchi Momoyama period, the conflict is finally resolved by Oda Nobunaga, and the Edo period represented the final step to overall compromise by Toyotomi Hideyoshi and later Tokugawa Ieyasu. This chart connects to the conflict and compromise because the first chart showing the Ashikaga rule seems like a good compromise between the daimyos, but the chaos and conflict of the Onin War by a disorganized empire and rebelling daimyos eventually caused the death of Shogun Ashikaga Yoshiaki, as seen in the second chart. The second chart also shows that Oda Nobunaga took over some of the daimyos so that he would be the new and more organized leader of Japan, leading to a later compromise. Oda Nobunaga's refusing to compromise stopped the conflicting samurai age and has brought Japan to a nation with a more stable economy and an overall peace. For instance, if the disorganized Ashikaga shogunate was still in power, Japan would have a less powerful government, would still be an uncivilized nation, and would not have control over its current 127 million people. After examination, it seems that Oda Nobunaga's ending the conflict by refusing a compromise was essential to modernizing Japan. Somehow, his brutal actions made the country less brutal today. Oda Nobunaga's rampage through the barbaric clans of ancient Japan started a legacy which inspired future shoguns to continue his unification. This is because of his wit, skill, and help from Portuguese traders. There is a common saying that Nobunaga planted the rice, Hideyoshi harvested and cooked it, but Ieyasu ate it. Oda Nobunaga's refusing to compromise with shoguns and instead take the throne himself eventually led to his dream of a stable, advanced nation with few conflicts, which we know today.